Imagine this. You're standing in front of the mirror. You've brushed your teeth, fixed your clothes, maybe even faked a half smile, like you're trying to convince the glass it's all okay. But something is off. Not outside, not anything anyone can point to. It's something behind your eyes, something you can't name. You don't know when it started. It's not tied to a breakup, a loss, or some major catastrophe. No grave has been dug, no betrayal uncovered. And yet, you hurt, quietly, constantly, like a whisper of sorrow. Stitched beneath your skin, you go through the motions. Eat, reply, work, smile when expected. But the silence inside you grows louder with every sunrise. It's not dramatic, not chaotic. It's worse, it's subtle. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because how do you fight something you can't see? How do you heal when you don't know where the wound is? Your mind searches for answers. Maybe it's stress. Maybe you're just tired. Maybe it's something hormonal, something spiritual, something existential, but none of those labels stick. They slide off you like water off glass. You scroll through your phone late at night, laugh at things that don't reach your chest. You replay conversations to find meaning in echoes. You tell yourself you're okay because you're functioning. You tell yourself you're lucky because others have it worse. And still, you ache. It's not sadness you can cry through. It's not fear you can escape. It's not anger you can release. It's something older than that. A grief with no funeral. A longing with no object. A scream pressed so deep inside it forgot how to make sound. And perhaps what's most haunting of all is that no one knows. Because you don't even know. Have you ever felt that? That strange unspoken ache? The kind of pain that shows up in small ways, when a song hits the wrong note, when the wind brushes your cheek too gently, when someone asks, "How are you?" and you almost say, "I don't know anymore." This isn't depression in its usual form. It's not anxiety, not despair. This is the phantom pain of something you've forgotten you lost. Somewhere along the way, you stopped asking where it came from, because the silence always answered back. But here's the contradiction. You're not broken, and yet something inside you isn't whole. You look fine. You are fine, at least by the standards the world expects from you. And maybe that's the root of the sickness. That fine is no longer enough. That healing is not about mending what's obvious, but rediscovering what was stolen so long ago you stopped looking for it. Could it be that the reason you're hurting is not because something is wrong with you, but because something has been missing for so long? You began to call the emptiness your personality. What if your pain isn't a problem to fix, but a messenger you've ignored? And what if, just maybe, your suffering is the only thing still honest about you? There's something ancient about this kind of ache. It doesn't speak the language of productivity or positive thinking. It doesn't care how many goals you've crushed or followers you've gained. It speaks in symbols, silence, and half-remembered dreams. You're not here because you're weak. You're here because a deeper part of you is starting to wake up. It's uncomfortable, raw, confusing. But that pain, the one without a name, is a compass. It's pointing somewhere. And before we can follow it, we must first confront the most uncomfortable truth of all. What if the reason you're in pain is because you've never met the real you? What if all the years of smiling, pleasing, surviving, achieving have buried something vital beneath the performance? What if the shadow that follows you isn't your enemy, but your last unspoken truth? And what if the pain isn't here to break you, but to break through the version of you that was never truly alive? Now pause, breathe, let that idea sink in. Because in the next section, we're not going to chase the usual answers. We'll go deeper. We'll look at the roots, the psychological, the philosophical, the spiritual scaffolding that's kept this ache alive. We'll ask the questions no one dares to ask. We'll meet the hidden parts of yourself that have waited in silence. And perhaps you'll finally understand why you've been hurting all along. Like, subscribe and stay with this. We're only just beginning. There's a silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from disconnection. A severing, so subtle you didn't even feel the cut. And yet the moment it happened, something inside you began to dim. Not all at once. No, that would have been too obvious. It happened gradually, like a dimmer switch. One moment your wonder faded. Then your laughter lost its spark. Eventually, even your reflection began to feel like a stranger's. This is the hidden problem. Not trauma in the loud sense, but erosion, the slow, invisible draining of your selfhood. And the most dangerous part? You learned how to function through it. You became fluent in masks, in saying "I'm fine" with surgical precision, in blending into expectations, into roles, into performance. But beneath it all, your soul has been whispering, "This isn't me. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Yet few ever reach that privilege, not because they're lazy, not because they're unworthy, but because they've been taught since childhood to become who they should be instead. There's the first fracture. As a child, you did not ask, "Who am I?" You asked, "Who must I be to be loved?" That question becomes your compass. You laugh when it pleases others. You hide what's inconvenient. You shapeshift to survive. And every time you do, you trade a piece of your authenticity for acceptance. Not all at once, but piece by piece, until the reflection in the mirror becomes efficient, productive, likable, but not real. That's where the ache begins. You don't cry because someone left. You cry because you left. Your true self was abandoned the moment the world convinced you that being yourself was somehow not enough. This isn't just poetic, it's psychological. Friedrich Nietzsche called it the death of the self through conformity. He warned that when we submit to the herd morality, we become shadows of what we could have been. Not because we were born weak, but because we forgot to question the rules we were taught. He asked, "How can a man know himself? He is a thing obscure and veiled." And indeed, the veiling is deliberate. School didn't teach you how to confront your inner world. Religion often taught shame over reflection. Culture pushed achievement over meaning. And so, we end up as strangers to our own interior, experts at avoiding mirrors, both literal and metaphorical. But why does this matter? Because pain, when stripped of its labels, is often just the soul's final language, the last thing it can use to call your attention back to what matters. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that suffering was not an obstacle in life, but its essential condition, that without suffering, we would never turn inward. Think about that. If you were always happy, would you ever ask who you really are? If you were always at peace, would you ever search for truth? The ache you feel is not a malfunction. It's a signal, an invitation. But here's the trap. Modern life has taught you to silence that signal. Scroll past it, drown it in distractions, reframe it as weakness, label it as a chemical imbalance, before asking if it might be truth. Speaking through discomfort. Even Viktor Frankl, imprisoned in the deepest pits of suffering, recognized something profound. When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. Read that again. Now look at your life. Are your days filled with genuine connection? Or just noise? Are you living toward something? Or simply away from pain? Is your busyness an act of ambition? Or an anesthetic? Jean-Paul Sartre, the existentialist, believed hell was not a fiery pit, but a life lived in inauthenticity, that the real torment was being unable or unwilling to choose one's truth. And yet most people walk around like ghosts, burdened with identities they never chose. The career chosen to impress a parent, the marriage that makes sense on paper, the opinions copied from influencers, the dreams muted because they were unrealistic. Do you feel that? That quiet betrayal? Not of others, but of yourself. And so the pain lingers, not as punishment, but as proof that something inside you still refuses to die, that something ancient in you is fighting to be remembered, a part that never learned how to lie, a voice too wild, too soft, too honest to survive the noise of modern life. It doesn't speak in achievements. It doesn't care for metrics or medals. It asks questions like, what did you love before you were told what to pursue? When did you stop singing? Whose voice became louder than your own? This is the hidden root of your pain. It's not weakness. It's not failure. It's the consequence of having lived too long in someone else's script. But here's the miracle. You are not the script. You are the author who forgot their pen. You don't need to fix yourself. You need to return to yourself. But to do that, you must face the next reality. This silent pain hasn't just affected your sense of self. It's been shaping the world around you in ways you haven't even noticed. Your relationships, your decisions, your perception of reality, everything. And in the next section, we'll uncover just how deep the roots go. You'll see that the ache you thought was personal is actually systemic, and that your healing is not just possible. It might be the most revolutionary act of your life. Ready to see what's been hiding in plain sight? Then come with me into the unseen consequences. You think it's just a feeling, that strange hollow weight behind your ribs, that invisible bruise that flinches when no one touches you. But it isn't just a feeling. It's a filter, one that quietly colors your entire world. You don't realize it, but this pain, it's been shaping your life like an unseen hand. Not because you asked it to, but because you never knew it was there. Pain unspoken becomes belief. Belief becomes identity. And identity becomes reality. Think back. How many times have you walked away from joy? Not because you didn't want it, but because something inside whispered, "You don't deserve this." How many people have you pushed away because closeness felt more dangerous than loneliness? How many dreams have you buried? Not because they were impossible, but because somewhere, silently, you decided you weren't allowed to want that much. This is how it spreads, like smoke from an unseen fire, like mold in a wall you never thought to check. It weaves itself into how you speak, how you love, how you think, until it doesn't feel like pain anymore. It just feels like you. Let's go deeper. The modern world rewards functionality. It doesn't ask, "Are you whole?" It asks, "Can you perform?" So you learn to operate on autopilot. But here's the paradox. You can survive an entire lifetime and never actually live one day in your own truth. Because the moment your inner world becomes too loud, society offers you a dozen ways to silence it. An app, a pill, a distraction, a dopamine rush, a new identity to try on. But never the mirror, because the mirror demands confrontation. Let's talk about your mind for a moment. Your brain is not built for truth. It's built for survival. Cognitive biases exist to protect you from the unbearable, to keep you functioning even when everything inside is on fire. Take the confirmation bias. Your brain naturally seeks evidence for what it already believes. So if you believe you're not good enough, you'll find proof in every rejection, every silence, every delay. Then there's the negativity bias. We remember criticism more than praise, pain more than peace. That ache you carry, it amplifies the bad and muffles the good. Joy feels suspicious. Hope feels naive. Peace feels temporary. And yet, you call this normal, but the cost is enormous. This silent suffering bleeds into relationships. You love people halfway because you're afraid of being seen fully. You anticipate abandonment before anyone has left. You interpret neutrality as rejection. You overthink compliments but accept criticism without resistance. You settle, not because it's right, but because safety feels safer than freedom. You begin to sabotage things before they can leave you. You test people to see if they'll still love you after the thorns show. And when they finally pull away, you say, "See? I knew it." But what if you created the very outcome you feared? Not because you're flawed, but because you were too wounded to believe you were worthy of peace. Now pull back. This isn't just your story. It's a pattern echoed in millions of quiet lives. Our world is built to perpetuate this ache. From childhood, we're told to strive, to earn worth, to outperform others, to win love by becoming someone else's definition of valuable. We are trained to forget ourselves, then punished for feeling lost. Even social media has weaponized this. Your feeds don't reflect your soul. They reflect your wounds. You don't scroll to connect, you scroll to compare. You don't post to express, you post to be validated. You become addicted to the illusion of significance, while your real self sits untouched, beneath the surface. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility, because the world will not save you from a trap it profits from. And what about your spirituality? For many, even their faith is filtered through this ache. You pray not with trust, but with desperation. You seek signs not to understand, but to feel less alone. You beg for healing, but secretly believe you're unworthy of it. The ache turns sacredness into performance, and suddenly, you're not worshiping a higher power, you're pleading with it to love you. But how can the divine reach you when even you have forgotten how to reach yourself? This is the unseen consequence. Your pain has shaped your reality. It has taught you how much to hope, how deeply to love, how long to stay silent. But what if it doesn't have to anymore? What if the ache doesn't get the final word? What if your pain, left unexplored, becomes a prison, but faced with courage becomes a path? A rebellion, not loud, not angry, but a radical act of remembering. And that's where we go next. Because now that you've seen the hidden impact of your forgotten sorrow, now that you've recognized the way it's threaded through your thoughts, your choices, your view of self, you are ready for something rare. A crack in the script, a doorway. In the next section, we begin the rebellion. A way out, not through denial, not through escape, but through something far more dangerous. Truth. Truth that challenges everything you were told. Truth that reclaims the voice you buried. Truth that does not ask permission. Are you ready to tear the script? To choose wholeness over approval? To remember who you were before the world trained you to forget? Then come, we break the silence next. You don't need a map. You need to remember that you were never truly lost, only taught. To stop trusting your own compass. This is the rebellion. Not the kind painted with slogans or carried in the streets, but a quiet, devastating return to the self you exiled to survive. This is the rebellion that begins in the mirror. Not with war paint, but with the courage to see what you've been running from. It starts when you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "Who taught me that I was wrong to begin with?" You weren't born ashamed. You weren't born broken. You weren't born with a voice that said, "I am not enough." That was given to you, whispered by teachers, coded in grades, etched into you by parents who were never taught how to love what they couldn't control, amplified by religions that mistook obedience for holiness, reinforced by systems that value compliance over consciousness. But now you know, and here's where it all begins to fracture. Do you want to break free? Start here. 1. Stop performing. Not for applause, not for likes, not even for healing. You are not a project to be improved. You are a presence to be reclaimed. Dare to sit in stillness. No productivity, no performance, no plans. Just you, unfiltered, unfinished, unapologetic. And yes, it will feel like dying. Because it is. It's the death of the false self you've worn for decades. But buried beneath that performance is the pulse of something real. Wild, aching, alive. Let it rise. 2. Start telling the truth. Not to the world, to yourself. Stop calling your sadness tiredness. Stop calling your boundaries overreactions. Stop calling your longing neediness. Name what's real, not to be fixed, not to be explained, but to be heard. Truth is not always beautiful. Sometimes it's ugly, raw, inconvenient, but it is the doorway to wholeness. 3. Reclaim your inner authority. You are not required to live according to blueprints made by people who never met your soul. Break the scripts. Who says success looks like that job? Who says love must look like that marriage? Who says you can't start over at your age? Who says healing must be linear? Every should is a leash. Cut it. Nietzsche spoke of the Übermensch, not as a superior being, but as one who creates new values. Not inherited, not imposed, created. Can you do that? Can you define joy, not as comfort, but as authenticity? Can you define strength, not as silence, but as vulnerability? Can you define meaning, not as productivity, but as presence? Then you are already rewriting the rules. 4. Return to your body. The ache you feel isn't just mental. Your body holds your story too. Every clench of your jaw, every knot in your back, every shallow breath, it speaks. You cannot think your way out of pain you've never physically acknowledged. So breathe, slow, deep, rebellious breath. Move! Not to sculpt your image, but to shake the dust from your spirit. Your body isn't decoration. It is a ritual, and healing is a full-body rebellion. 5. Speak with your shadow. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the disowned parts of ourselves. We exile into the unconscious. But here's the twist. Your shadow holds the truth you've been searching for. The anger you suppressed, it contains your lost boundaries. The envy you buried, it reveals your true desires. The fear you avoided, it points to where your power is sleeping. The shadow is not evil. It is simply unmet truth. And when you integrate it, not as enemy, but as teacher, you become whole, not perfect, whole. 6. Find stillness, then burn the map. Aldous Huxley once wrote, "The truth that makes men free is for the most part the truth, which men prefer not to hear." You will never break free by adding more noise. The rebellion is not outside you. It is within. In silence, you'll hear your true voice, one that was drowned out for years by the voices of others. In stillness, you'll see the fractures clearly and realize they were doorways all along. In solitude, you'll finally meet yourself and whisper, "There you are." But hear this. Freedom is not peace at first. It is disruption. It is rage. It is grief for all the years you betrayed yourself just to be loved, accepted, seen. Let the grief come. Mourn the masks. Weep for the years. Then breathe. Because on the other side of grief is something sacred. A life where you do not shrink to fit. A love that does not ask you to disappear. A purpose that does not require you to bleed to prove it's real. You are not here to suffer in silence. You are not here to perform wellness. You are not here to survive your own life. You are here to remember. And now you stand at the edge, not of breakdown, but of breakthrough. Because you've unmasked the illusion. You've seen the architecture of the ache. You've begun the rebellion. And in the final section, we will go one step further. Beyond healing. Beyond recovery. Into something holy. A truth so deep it rewrites your past. So radical it redeems your suffering. This is what the pain was pointing to all along. Are you ready to see it? Then come. The final truth awaits. What if you were never meant to be fixed? What if the ache you carry was not a flaw, but a compass pointing home? What if everything, the quiet sadness, The numb mornings, the nights you couldn't name your sorrow, was not evidence of something wrong with you, but proof that something in you still remembers who you were before the forgetting. Here is the truth. You are not broken. You are breaking open. Every moment you felt lost, alone, unseen, was a moment when your deeper self was crying not for escape, but for birth. This pain was not meant to silence you. It was meant to strip away everything false, until only what was real remained. And now here you are, not healed, not perfect, but present. And in that presence, something sacred stirs, a realization so quiet you almost miss it. The thing you were looking for was never out there. It was never in the job, never in the relationship, never in the praise, the ritual, the progress, because nothing external can repair an internal betrayal. And the deepest betrayal is not what others did to you. It's what you did to yourself in order to be loved by them. You silenced your truth to stay safe. You abandoned your voice to feel accepted. You wore masks so convincingly you forgot they weren't skin. But now you remember. You were never supposed to become someone else's idea of enough. You were supposed to become the truest version of you. And the pain? It was the invitation back. Here is the paradox. You spent your life trying to be lovable. But the version of you that was most lovable was the one you buried to earn love. You wanted to be seen. But the self you presented to the world was carefully curated to avoid being seen too deeply. You wanted to belong, but you abandoned your inner home to find a place in other people's stories. And now the house you built doesn't feel like yours, but you can go home. Not to the past, not to who you were, but to who you are beneath all the becoming. So let's ask the real question. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when you stop auditioning for love, success, salvation? Who are you when you sit in the dark with nothing to prove? That person, the one who sits with your fear, your shame, your ache, and does not flinch. That is the self you were born with. Not a self to become, but to uncover. And now the final truth. There is no version of you more worthy than the one who is hurting. Read that again. The pain does not disqualify you. It sanctifies you. You do not need to get better to be whole. You do not need to fix yourself to be lovable. You do not need to understand everything to live meaningfully. You just need to stop pretending the ache isn't there and start listening to what it's asking of you. It's asking for presence, for truth, for return. So now you stand on sacred ground, not because you've conquered the pain, but because you've refused to abandon yourself through it. That is the revolution. That is the awakening. That is what the world will never teach you. Because a person who truly knows themselves is free, and free people are dangerous to systems built on shame, fear, and conformity. So be dangerous. Be so grounded in your truth that no one else's approval feels like oxygen. Be so at home in your skin that the world's rejection feels irrelevant. Be so deeply connected to your pain that it becomes a bridge instead of a burden. And one last thing. The journey doesn't end here. You'll forget again. You'll ache again. You'll wear the mask again some days. That's okay. This is not a straight line. This is a spiral staircase. And each time you return to the pain, you do so with deeper eyes, steadier breath, softer hands. Each return is less about suffering and more about becoming. So tonight, if the ache comes again, don't run. Sit with it like an old friend. Ask it what it's trying to show you. Let it speak. Because that ache, the one with no name, might be the most honest thing you've ever felt. And honesty is holy. You began this journey searching for why you were hurting. And now you know you were never just hurting. You were remembering. You were re-entering your own soul. And the pain was not a problem. It was the door. Walk through it and take your life back. If this spoke to something in you, if something deep in your bones finally exhaled, share it, like, subscribe, speak it aloud. Let this not be a moment, but a movement. Because the world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more honest ones. And you, just by being here, by feeling this, by not turning away, have already begun.